this week our business on the import side is down 35% compared to the same time last year. These ships coming in have the tariff applied first time as they arrive from Asia.
So yeah, just to offer some clarity, that's the executive director of the Port of Los Angeles, someone whose job is to look at the port and say, good, not so good. And well, he's doing the rounds on air to warn the American people of what is coming.
This is where we started to see a big drop-off in cargo, because if you're buying a product out of China today, it's 2.5 times more expensive than it was just last month.
The idea that we are going to reroute all of this manufacturing back to America and find little tiny American hands that are going to do it is a farce.
What about, tiny little Vietnamese hands?
There was a very... So stop with the hands. It's distracting.
He started the hands.
Don't blame me.
His hands are already tiny.
The executive director of the Port of Los Angeles talked about what's going on there. 35% down in terms of volume. He says truckers are going to be laid off. Dock workers are going to be laid off. That's a big deal.
It's always what's going to happen.
And it never happens.
And it never happens. It's not true that it doesn't happen. Prices are already going up. Layoffs at Mac, at their Lehigh plant, 10% of their force. These are real consequences.
That's right. Shipments from China to the west coast of the US are set to plummet this week as the impact of President Donald Trump's tariffs leads companies to cut their import orders. But not to worry, guys. Let's turn it over to Scott Bessent and see what he has to say to ease your concerns.
I said before, there are 18 very important trading relationships. We are currently negotiating with 17 of those trading partners. China, we have not engaged in negotiations with as of yet.
That's great. But you use the word admission, like if you want admission to this market. I might say that the reason the market is down is because they look at admission in a different way. What happened to the 200 deals that Donald Trump talked about last week that, quote, we have already had and gotten done? Or, you know, there are 200 deals, et cetera. I think this might be perceived by the market as an admission that they don't have a deal yet with any country, let alone Canada or India, because we were hearing so many rumors about India, right, Dagan? I mean, this was last week. And Scott Bessent said yesterday we would be very close to a deal that we will announce sometime, possibly this week. Where are these deals? And now suddenly we don't have to make a deal.
Sounds good, right? Yeah, let's go back to Gene Soroka. Well, Soroka told anchors that he expects incoming cargo volume to slide by more than a third next week compared with the same period in 2024. You know, when the economy was stable.
How much volume has just dropped off in the last few weeks?
Yeah, about a third of the import volume, which means give or take about 50,000 20-foot equivalent units gone off the arrivals coming in next week.
So from next week is when you expect to see this really hit?
That's correct. And that matches up. The announcement's back on April 2nd. Then on April 8th, a little bit of a change on everybody, ex-China, Mexico, Canada. And those arrivals are coming at us this weekend.
We'll, of course, dedicate time to your port, but I'm just wondering how you're anticipating this rolls and ripples through the economy from here, how it hits trucking, when this turns up on the shelf. What's the distance, the time from when you see a drop-off in volume and when we, as consumers, see the shortages?
Right. So CEOs are telling me, hit the pause button, right? I'm not going to import anymore at these kind of prices. Let's wait and see. I don't know if it's going to be 2 hours, 2 days, or 2 weeks till I get some clarity. Then hiring. Off the table for right now. Capital investment, pause. And the retailers are telling me that realistically, with even the 10%, I'm going to have to pass it on to the consumers.
So how much is this really coming from all over? It's not just about China. This is about really global trade coming to a standstill until there is a much greater degree of certainty and a much lower tariff rate than even the baseline that's been put out there.
Yeah, when I was last with you all, Lisa, I said global trade's going to slow, economies will follow, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Back in November, so many of us were wringing our hands about 4% inflation. We've just added 10 percentage points to imports coming out of Southeast Asia for our port, and these unbelievable numbers out of China.
How much are you going to see a real decline in dock workers if this goes on?
Yeah, this is the question. So the trucker hauling 4 or 5 containers today, next week, she probably hauls 2 or 3. The dock workers are no longer going to see overtime and double shifts. They're going to probably work less than a traditional work week, starting right off the bat. Every 4 containers mean a job. So when we start dialing this back, it's less job opportunities.
And what happens if we get a deal?
If we get a deal, it's going to take about a month. Let me walk you through that real quick. About 2 weeks to get the ships repositioned around these major ports, from Qingdao to Shanghai to Xiamen, load up all those containers, and then another 2 weeks to steam across the Pacific to get to us. This is important because now we're talking about spring and summer fashion. So we're kind of at a crux here that we've got to have something pretty quick.
This comes as users have took to social media showing ports looking uncharacteristically empty across the country after Donald Trump announced sharp increase in tariffs on Chinese goods back in April 2nd. Remember Liberation Day? Where are we on those 90 deals in 90 days? Ah, right. Well, as a result, we know that escalation happened on both sides, eventually resulting in both the US and China imposing levies of more than 100% on many goods from each other. And this comes as US data on shipments out of China had already started to signal slowing trade volume to the United States, alarming economists and the market as a whole, clearly.
But if the tariffs come and they stay, would it be cheaper to manufacture toys in the United States?
We don't see that happening. We believe that production in other countries where we can be efficient and more productive is the best balance between manufacturing in international outside of the U.S. and continue to develop product in terms of design and creativity in America.
The toy industry has pushed for exemptions from the tariffs. The president basically used toys as an example, though, that kids can have $2 instead of 30 or even more than that. So it doesn't sound like that's in the working. Have you had conversations with the administration about this?
Look, the 80% of toy production globally does happen in China. We do support the Toy Association advocacy for 0 tariffs on toys to ensure that safe and affordable products remain accessible to everyone, given that toys are such an essential part of children's lives. We need to remember that a significant part of toy creation happens in America. Design, development, product engineering, brand management, all happens in America. Producing product in other countries allows us to create quality product at affordable price points. And this is something we are committed to do, to continue to create quality product and find the right balance of price and value.
But what is even more alarming, right, is the sheer lack of clarity coming from this administration. I mean, not just from Trump, we expect him to lie his way through every presser and sit-down interview, but his administration are doing absolutely nothing to clarify their stance. In fact, they continue to contradict each other on the matter to the point that even Fox News have had enough of the ambiguity.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And it's going to be an issue. And Democrats are talking about this constantly and know that whoever runs is going to be the candidate, or in this huge primary that we're inevitably going to have, that there are going to be some questions asked about 2024. And for people who went out there and vouched for Biden, what did you know and when did you know it? And a lot of people are about to make, big money on these books, exposing what they knew and that they held until after the election so that they could get that sales just right. But I gotta say that for as bleak of a picture as Tommy is painting of what is going on in the Democratic Party, we are up 4 to 7 points on the generic ballot right now. Donald Trump is underwater on every single important metric, including immigration overall. He's up on when it comes to deportations and securing the border. But when people look at his immigration policy writ large, they don't like what they're seeing. The American public knows that Abrego Garcia issue, it's about due process, and it's not about the man himself, that there are many innocent people that are in that prison in El Salvador who don't deserve to be there. So he's not managing the economy well. Everyone knows that a tariff is a tax on the American consumer. He's too focused on, tariffing the movie industry.
I don't hear a lot of people crying tears over Abrego Garcia.
Well, it's 2 to 1 favoring bringing him back and then deport him under proper channels, but don't send him to a prison for a life sentence without going in front of a judge for that.
It's so evident that they're in over their head, and as a result, they're panicking, with Trump pivoting from prices will come down day one to, well, maybe you don't actually need those dolls for Christmas.
Said this week, got a lot of attention. You were at your cabinet meeting. You said, quote, I'm going to quote what you said, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah.
And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. Are you saying that your tariffs will cause some prices to go up?
No, I think the tariffs are going to be great for us because it's going to make us rich.
But you said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an acknowledgement that some prices will go up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls. Because what we were doing with China was just unbelievable. We had a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars with China.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying Americans could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have $30. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.